Oh, you didn't know about the Bahamas trip? My sister Sarah's voice oozed with fake sympathy through the phone, each word dripping with the kind of condescension only she had mastered. I thought Mom told you. We're all going next month. Mom, Dad, me, Brian. It's going to be amazing. Oh, by the way, Mom said you'd be free to watch their dogs while we're gone. I stood in my tiny kitchen, fingers tightening around my coffee mug until the ceramic creaked under the pressure. My name is Mitchell, and at 27 years old, I had just learned that my entire family had planned a luxury vacation without me. What made it worse wasn't just the exclusion, it was the assumption. Of course I'd stay behind. Of course I'd watch their pets. Of course I had nothing better to do, because what was Mitchell's life if not a convenience for everyone else's? No, Sarah. Mom didn't mention the Bahamas, I said, fighting to keep my voice level. She also didn't mention needing a free dog sitter. Sarah gave her signature laugh, the one she always used when dismissing anything I said. You're overreacting. It's just a family trip. You know you don't really like beach vacations anyway. Besides, you're always available. There it was. My entire role in the family, distilled into a single sentence. Always available. Always the backup plan. That night, my mom finally called. Her tone was light, almost rehearsed. Honey, we've been meaning to talk to you about a little favor. I cut her off. Let me guess, you want me to watch the dogs while you all relax in the Bahamas? The bitterness in my voice was impossible to hide. Oh, Sarah mentioned it already? Perfect, she chirped, breezing right past my anger. She launched into her detailed itinerary, rattling off spa appointments, snorkeling excursions, and candlelit dinners. Not a single acknowledgement of the fact that they'd excluded me. Not even a perfunctory, wish you could come. So you'll do it, right? You know how Rocky gets at the kennel. There was no question in her mind that I would say yes, because I always had. Hung up the call and opened my laptop. My fingers hovered over the Book Now button for a one-way ticket to Santorini, a place I'd dreamed of visiting since my first college photography class. For years I'd saved articles, studied maps, imagined myself standing on those whitewashed cliffs. I hadn't booked it before because what would they need me for if I wasn't here? My phone buzzed, another text from Sarah. Mom says you're being difficult. Just watch the dogs, Mitchell. It's not like you ever have plans. That was it. Without hesitation, I clicked confirm booking. The next day, the family group chat was in chaos. Mom called first, her voice already trembling with manufactured guilt. Honey, we're family. You can't seriously be thinking about leaving us in the lurch like this. Dad followed up with a carefully worded email, framed as disappointment cloaked in fake concern. We thought you understood how much we rely on you. Your mother is beside herself. Sarah's texts were more direct. Seriously? You're running off to Greece out of spite? Out of spite? Number, out of self-respect. I waited until our weekly family dinner to drop the final bomb. They were midway through planning the Bahamas itinerary when I calmly set my phone on the table, screen up, displaying my confirmed flight to Santorini. You'll need to find someone else for the dogs, I said simply. My mum's fork clattered onto her plate. What do you mean? We're leaving in 3 weeks. You can't just abandon us. I took a sip of water, savouring the moment. You already abandoned me. You just didn't bother to tell me. The backlash was immediate and vicious. Mom accused me of ruining the trip. Dad said I was being childish and ungrateful. Sarah called me selfish. as if my existence only mattered when it served them. But nothing compared to the guilt parade my mother unleashed. She dug out old photo albums, showing me pictures of myself as a child, always holding the family pets, always the responsible one, always the one left behind when they went on spontaneous trips with Sarah. "You've always been so good with animals," she said, her voice thick with fake nostalgia. "That's because I was always the one left home to care for them while you all left," I said softly. The family splintered after that. Sarah stopped talking to me, branding me the selfish sibling. Mum launched a full-scale campaign through the extended family, painting me as the ungrateful child who abandoned her parents in their hour of need. But something incredible happened too. Dad showed up at my apartment the day before my flight. In his hand was a camera lens, the exact one I'd been saving for, the one I'd dreamed of using to capture Santorini's sunsets. I saw your blog," he said awkwardly. "Sarah showed me. I didn't know you were that good." I accepted the lens, stunned. "I cancelled my part of the Bahamas trip," he added. "Your mom and Sarah can go. Someone's got to take care of the dogs. Besides, I'd rather see Greece through your photos than sit by a pool." It wasn't a perfect reconciliation, but it was a start. As my plane lifted off, leaving my family's guilt and expectations far behind, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: freedom. For the first time, I wasn't the backup plan. I was the main character of my own life, and Santorini was waiting. That afternoon, as I boarded my flight to Greece, my phone buzzed with incoming messages. The first was from Sarah, surprisingly sincere for once. "Have an amazing trip, sis. Your pictures better be incredible." The kind of message she'd never have sent before Santorini became a line I refused to cross for anyone, including family. The second was from my mom, entirely on brand. "Here's the code for the home security cameras, so you can check in on Rocky and Max while we're gone." Even after everything, she was still operating under the assumption that I was monitoring her world from halfway across the planet. But it was the third message that made me pause, my hand tightening around the seat's armrest. "Just left my first comment on your blog. Hope I didn't screw it up. Please take care of yourself out there, not just your camera. Love, Dad." For a long moment I just sat there, the engine hum blending with the thoughts swirling in my head. It was a small gesture, but from my dad, it was a crack in the foundation of old habits, one that might actually mean something. Santorini was everything I'd dreamed of, and more. Every morning the sky bled pink and gold over the cliffs, bathing whitewashed buildings in light so perfect I felt like I was walking inside a postcard. I spent my days getting blissfully lost, my camera in hand, capturing cobbled streets, sapphire waves, and sunsets that felt too beautiful to be real. My blog followers loved the daily updates, but the biggest surprise was the sudden influx of familiar names in the comment section. My dad, who had always been technologically hopeless, left a comment on every single post. At first, they were awkward. "Nice photo, honey," always with 2 exclamation points, but slowly they evolved. By the 5th day, his comment read, "The way you captured the light on that church dome feels almost spiritual. Proud of you." Even Sarah started sharing my posts on her Instagram, calling me my talented sister who's making me want to trade yoga mats for a camera. It was so wildly unlike her that I had to reread it twice. But my mom didn't know how to handle it. She called every day, not to check on me, but to give me real-time updates on the dogs. "Rocky's been pacing by the window. He misses you. Max didn't eat dinner until your father hand-fed him." When guilt tripping failed, she tried critiquing my content. Are you sure you want to post so many sunset pictures? People will get bored. And that restaurant review, was that necessary? You don't want to ruin someone's business. It was textbook deflection, her way of reminding me I wasn't supposed to have my own voice, at least not one that didn't first pass through her filter. One evening, as I sipped wine at a cliffside cafe, my phone lit up with an unexpected call from Mrs. Chen, my parents' last-minute dog-sitting saviour. "Your mother's been here 6 times today," she said, sounding more amused than annoyed. "Brought me coffee, asked 700 questions about how I brush Max's fur. I think she's having some detachment issues." I winced. "I'm so sorry." "Don't be. After 40 years of teaching a high school, 2 dogs are nothing. Besides, it's kind of entertaining watching her struggle not to micromanage me." That same night, my dad sent me a private message. "Your mum booked herself into a hotel for the rest of the Bahamas trip. Says she can't enjoy herself knowing strangers are watching the dogs. Sarah's furious." I felt a brief pang of guilt, then remembered every cancelled plan, every "you don't mind, do you?" shrug that dictated my life for years. Her meltdown wasn't my responsibility. It never had been. Instead of apologizing, I doubled down. I posted more photos, wrote long-form blog entries about breaking free from family expectations, about rediscovering your own life after years of being cast in someone else's story. The response was overwhelming. Hundreds of comments poured in from readers with the exact same story: the reliable sibling, the invisible child, the family's emotional and logistical crutch. My follower count doubled, then tripled. A travel magazine reached out asking to license my Greece photos for a feature. Sarah called the next day, her tone oddly humble. "My yoga students are obsessed with your trip," she said. "They keep asking when you'll come teach a travel photography workshop at the studio." There was a pause, then something I never expected to hear from her. "You know, I always thought I was the brave one for backpacking through Europe, but you did something braver. You stood up to all of us. You made us see you." On my last night in Santorini, I sat on my balcony uploading my final sunset shot when my phone pinged. A text from my mom. It was a picture of my old bedroom, now her home office, filled with framed prints of my photos, carefully arranged along the walls. "Had these printed while you were gone," she wrote. "Your dad says art should be on walls, not just the internet." There was more. "I've been thinking a lot. Your dad said something I didn't want to hear, but he was right. We've taken you for granted so long, we forgot you were a person with your own dreams. I'm not good at saying sorry, but I'm trying to do better at showing you." I didn't reply right away. I wasn't ready to trust it fully, but it was a start. Six months later, Thanksgiving. The dining room looked different. My photos, the ones they'd ignored for years, now hung alongside every staged family portrait. My mum had even printed my blog's logo onto personalised place cards. "We have an announcement," she said after dinner, her voice a little tentative. "We're planning a family vacation." I braced myself. "And we want you to help plan it," Sarah cut in. "Your blog followers loved your Greece posts. We figured you could help us do something special." My dad held up a manila folder. "I've been looking at photography tours in Italy. Thought you might want to teach us a thing or two. Plus," my mum added quickly, "Mrs. Chen already agreed to watch Rocky and Max. I asked her months ago." I looked around the table, really seeing my family for the first time in years. They weren't perfect. My mum was still controlling, Sarah was still competitive, and my dad was still awkward with feelings, but they were trying. That was enough. Italy sounds perfect, I said, pulling out my phone. But this time, I'm in charge of the itinerary. Wouldn't have it any other way, my dad smiled. You're the expert now. And for the first time in my life, I believed it. 3 months later, the whole family actually made it to Italy. The first family trip I'd been part of in years, and the first where I wasn't hearing about it secondhand or being left behind to babysit pets. This time, I was in charge. The itinerary was mine. The plans were mine. But of course my mom's controlling instincts didn't disappear, they just took on a new shape. The first day in Rome, I caught her flipping through my printed itinerary, her pen scribbling little notes in the margins. This spot is famous but maybe too crowded. Should we swap it for something quieter? Does this restaurant have gluten-free options? Sarah's clean eating now. I said nothing. Old Lisa would have adjusted the plans immediately. New Lisa. She let it go in one ear and out the other, but Sarah, always the opportunist, couldn't resist. Lisa, can you take a few Instagram shots for me? Yours always turn out better. There it was, not a request but an assumption. Take them yourself, I said casually, snapping a selfie with the Trevi fountain behind me. I'm not your personal photographer. Sarah's eyes widened, genuinely shocked. It was the first time I'd ever said no. That night at dinner, the tension was so thick it was practically part of the menu. Mom kept trying to smooth things over, asking for my opinion on every dish, every wine choice, trying to pull me back into the role of peacekeeper. But Sarah couldn't help herself. She threw the first punch. "What's your problem lately?" she asked, just loud enough for everyone to hear. "You think you're some big deal now just because you have a little travel blog?" I set my fork down. "At least I pay my own way. Maybe you should try it sometime." Mum's face paled. "Girls, please, this is a family trip." Sarah sneered. "Family trip? Oh, you mean like the Bahamas trip? Funny, I don't remember you calling that a family trip when you left me out." Mom stammered. Sarah opened her mouth to fire back, but I beat her to it. "Actually, thank you for that," I said, voice perfectly even. "If you hadn't left me behind, I might still be the family doormat." The table fell silent. After dinner, I broke away from the group, wandering the streets of Rome alone. I needed air that wasn't full of decades-old resentment and unspoken tension. I found a small cafe tucked between two alleyways, ordered a glass of wine, and pulled out my phone. There was a text from Sarah, because of course there was. "Since when did you turn into such?" Day 3 in Florence, everything finally exploded. We were walking toward Piazza della Signoria when my mom sidled up beside me. "Lisa, can you let Sarah borrow your camera tonight? She wants some professional shots for her yoga studio's website." I laughed, sharp and humorless. "My camera? My work? Sarah can use her phone." Mum's face tightened. "It's just a camera, Lisa. Don't be so petty." And then Sarah, right on cue, tossed in her own match to the flame. "See? You're still bitter about the Bahamas." "God, let it go." I stopped walking. Bitter? Number grateful. That trip finally taught me my place in this family, and it's not the role you all wrote for me. Mum's hand grabbed my arm, voice dropping to a sharp whisper. "You're embarrassing us." I shook her off. "If anyone should be embarrassed, it's you." I walked away, leaving her standing there, stunned and silent, Sarah glowering beside her. That night, a note was slipped under my hotel door. "Lisa, I'm sorry if we've made you feel excluded. Families aren't perfect. Please don't shut us out." I folded it neatly and tucked it into my bag. For the first time, it didn't hurt to read those words. It just felt empty. Our last day in Venice, I spent the morning alone on a gondola, my camera capturing the golden shimmer of light on the canal water. My phone buzzed, a message from Dad. I know I should have stood up for you more. I'm not good with words, but I'm proud of you, Lisa. I hope someday you can forgive me. I wiped my eyes with my sleeve. At the airport, we said our awkward goodbyes. Sarah didn't speak to me. Mum hugged me, but it was stiff, like she was still trying to figure out who I was now. But Dad? He held my hand a second longer, pressing something into my palm. It was a Polaroid, a photo I'd taken of the Grand Canal that morning. I'm framing this for the living room, he said quietly. So we all remember that Lisa has a life too, one worth paying attention to. On the plane home, I stared out at the clouds, feeling something I hadn't expected. Not sadness, not anger, relief. They weren't perfect. They might never be. But for the first time, I didn't need them to be. I wasn't their photographer, their babysitter, their backup plan. I was Lisa, the daughter they were finally starting to see. And I wasn't done teaching them how.